How's it going, everyone? And welcome to the College Football Podcast with your host, Alec Peccato, and my co host, Bradley Walker. We are going to get right into. We have a busy show today, so we're going to get started. First thing we're going to talk about today is the head coach hirings that happened yesterday and today. And we're going to start with the big fish, Bill Belichick, getting hired by North Carolina. Neither of us thought we'd be saying this in 2024. Bill Belichick as a college football head coach.
Yeah, no, but I think
did not see this coming.
We briefly talked about it on Tuesday, and they were still working out the kinks on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It was announced today that he did, and I was listening to local sports radio on the way home, and Mike Florio, who's in the NFL, said that there's probably something in that contract that he signed with North Carolina that he can leave at any time without them taking any financial burden. So, like, when coaches get fired or they move on, if they get fired, they're due a buyout, where I don't think they're going to have to buy him out. I think he just goes back to the NFL. They already gave him a hoodie already. I don't know if you saw the photo of him with the AD.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen people on TikTok making videos of when he goes into high school kids' houses and tries to recruit them. Well, and then there was another hiring. There was two more. And one of them I just learned about earlier because I was looking at bowl games. Apparently, Tim Albin has taken the head coaching job at Charlotte.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I just learned about that, like I said, right before the show, because I was watching somebody that made a video on all the bowl games, and he said that Jacksonville State and Ohio bowl games probably going to be boring because both of the head coaches are gone. They both took new jobs. I'm personally, I'll say I don't know how much you know about Tim Albin, but following the MAC as much as I do, Tim Albin, Charlotte, you're getting a good head coach. Tim Albin, look what he did at Ohio. Good defense. AAC. I think it might take 1 or 2 years for Charlotte to be competitive, but watch out. Tim Albin has always had good defenses when he was at Ohio. That was their calling card. That is why every Ohio game you would look at, the final score would be under whatever the over-under was. And then the other one that was just made finalized today was Rich Rodriguez going to West Virginia.
Oh, we talked about that too on Tuesday too, bud. You talked about that. Okay. So he did take the job at West Virginia. Okay. No shocker.
I kind of figured he was. I'm not shocked. I know they were interviewing other people. Brian Hartline interviewed Anthony Beck. But I guess this is a return home for Rich Rodriguez because I think one of his first head coaching jobs was at West Virginia.
Before the
back
Michigan.
when they were in the Big East.
Yeah.
The original Big East was Syracuse, USF, UConn.
Yep.
But I'm not surprised by any of these three. Actually, I'm very surprised by the Belichick hire. I was not. That was the one I was most surprised by was Belichick. I did not expect him to be, and it's 3 years, $30 million.
Yeah,
and there's something in the contract that states that his son is the head coach in waiting.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah. which I thought one of his sons was a coordinator for a college team this year.
Steve was
Okay.
for, I want to say, maybe Kansas State.
Yeah, it was because I remember I watched a game, Bud, this year, and he was on the state. They had talked about him being on the sideline. That he was one of the he was I think he was the DC, or I don't, if he's DC or OC. I don't know if he falls in his dad's footsteps with being a defensive
He
minded
was
coach.
DC defensive coordinator. I want to say, like I said, maybe Kansas State.
Okay,
Look it up real quick.
let me see. All right, let me see.
Because I don't want to be, I don't want to get dogged on for being completely wrong. Because I know a few Kansas State fans, and I don't want to ruffle feathers with them like I did with Michigan for a whole 6 months.
Steve Belichick was the defensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies.
That's who it was. Washington. Okay.
So he's leaving.
I was wrong on the team. I said Kansas State. It was Washington.
Washington. Yep.
And then now we're gonna briefly cover. There was a couple guys in the portal that committed to places already. One of them being a kid that was at Tulane that ended up beating out Ty Thompson to be the starter, Darian Mensah. He was a true freshman starting quarterback at Tulane. He transferred to Duke. Do you think that's a good fit for him?
I mean, unless you're not going to get playing time, I mean, going to Duke, that's hard because Duke.
Let me say this: Malik Murphy's in the portal.
Okay, I mean Duke,
and so is Grayson Loftus.
Duke is a basketball school. I know they've had, they had a good season this year, and they've had some good football seasons the past few years. But I mean, would you leave Tulane? I mean, Tulane was in the American Championship game this year against Army, and they've been in the championship game the last few years. I think Tulane won the conference.
Money.
Well, that's the major factor in all of it, is you get paid.
I think he thinks he can get a bigger NIL deal.
I was just about to say, and the only reason because let's see, Tulane is in Tulane's in Louisiana. Tulane's in New Orleans. And then Duke is in Durham, North Carolina. So I guess he figures maybe more money in the ACC. I would say yes. In that case, conference-wise, more money in the ACC than there is in the American, no doubt. No doubt about that. So, yeah.
And then Florida State fans, I feel bad for you. Thomas Castellanos goes from Boston College to Duke. Don't get me wrong, he's a good quarterback, but he's what's the word I'm looking for? He's not Lamar Jackson. Put it that way. I don't get this move for Thomas Castellanos. He was the starter at Boston College, and there was no good reasoning for him jumping in the transfer portal. They said Bill O'Brien came out and said that he was stepping away from the team for like a couple days, and then all of a sudden he goes in the portal. And now he's at Florida State. And everybody's picking on Florida State. They're like, oh, Florida State fans, good luck having another mid-season. I see it the opposite. I actually think there's going to be people out there that say this is a bad move for Castellanos. I think it's a lateral move because I think Boston College might have had another kid coming in at quarterback that they think was probably going to beat out Thomas Castellanos for the starting gig. So that's why Castellanos jumped in the portal and went somewhere else. And then Jacob Zeno, who was at UAB, committed to transfer to Texas A&M to be the quarterback there. And everybody's like, oh, he's going to be the starter. You really think he's going to beat out who's the quarterback for A&M? Reed?
I don't think that's happening. I think the only reason that Reed would lose his job is if he either transfers himself or he graduates. I think he's kind of like the staple for the Aggies at quarterback.
So then how does that transfer make sense for Zeno? Is he going to sit behind Reed for a year?
Maybe, Bud, there's an opportunity. Maybe they think that. I know that it's not as popular as it used to be, the old 2 quarterback system, but maybe there was something that drew him to College Station. I'm not sure, but I mean, leaving UAB, do a Trent Dilfer no more. I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
I don't either.
I don't blame him. So,
and then he hasn't committed anywhere yet, but they're saying that he's being crystal balled to transfer to A&M. Former Texas Tech wide receiver Micah Hudson. What do you think about him going to A&M? If that's where he ends up.
Again, I have a funny feeling, Bo. You were doing this earlier. I think he probably can get more NIL deals being at A&M than he could be at Tech, and more, SEC, more TV, more chances for him to make, increase his draft stock if that's what he plans on doing to go to the next level to the NFL. That would make total sense to go to a bigger program. At the end of the day, it sucks when coaches and players transfer to a bigger program and they leave your program behind and having to find new players, new coaches. But that's the way college football is. So that's why, you're for a team, not a coach or a player.
Yeah. Well, now we are going to, and I know other people have already done this, we are going to put out our brackets for the 12-team playoff with the winners of every game and who we ultimately think is going to win the national championship. And I will let my esteemed co-host Bradley go first.
Okay, so in the 12-5 matchup between Clemson and Texas, I have the Longhorns advancing. In the 9-8 Ohio State, Tennessee, we picked this game the other day. The Buckeyes will win, which means they'll get a third shot at Oregon in round 2. Texas will play Arizona State. In the SMU Penn State game, I'm pulling the upset. I'm going with the Mustangs to go play Boise State. And then I have Indiana upsetting Notre Dame to go play Georgia in round 2.
You know what?
I have Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, SMU, Boise State, Indiana, Georgia. Now, Indiana's Cinderella season ends in round 2. Georgia wins. Boise State wins. Oregon wins again. Texas wins. So that puts Texas and Oregon in the Cotton Bowl. Boise State, Georgia in the Orange Bowl. And I have Georgia, Texas in the national championship game. But this time, the Longhorns are the national champions.
Okay. Here's mine. So in the 12-5 matchup, I have Texas beating Clemson. Sorry, Clemson fans. Of course, 8-9, it's kind of Captain Obvious.
Yeah.
You'd have to pay me a lot of money to pick against Ohio State, especially against Tennessee.
Yeah.
When I've heard Tennessee fans saying that, Tennessee's got the best defensive line, they're going to make Ohio State's offensive line look silly. Don't believe it. In the 6-11 matchup, sorry, Penn State fans, you're going to hate me for this. I have SMU beating Penn State. And the 7-10 matchup, as much as I'd love to see Indiana beat Notre Dame, I don't think it's going to happen. So then we go down to the second round. We've got Texas, Arizona State. I've got Texas winning. Moving on, I've got Ohio State gets another shot at Oregon. And this time, I don't think Will Howard messes up this time. I think Ohio State beats Oregon. Then I've got SMU, Boise State. And I've got SMU beating Boise State. Then we go to Georgia, Notre Dame. Sorry, Notre Dame. Your season ends right here. I've got Notre Dame losing to Georgia. So we get to the Final Four. It's Ohio State, Texas, SMU, Georgia. And I've got Ohio State beating Texas and Georgia beating SMU. To set up the national championship game, Ohio State and Georgia. And Ohio State gets their revenge for the playoff game when I can't remember what state. I think I know it was a DB on Georgia that targeted Marvin Harrison and hit him in the head on purpose because they knew Georgia was going to lose. But I think Ohio State ends up getting its revenge. And I think for Georgia, now we can talk about some keys for the playoff games. So for Georgia, what's it going to take for Georgia to get back to the championship game?
Carson Beck has to be the Carson Beck that's good, not bad. I mean, and they have to play defense, which Georgia struggled with this year. First of all, they can't take anybody lightly, whether if it is Indiana or Notre Dame, whoever their opponent is out of round one. Neither one of those teams they can take lightly because Indiana and Notre Dame can both put points up. We know that. We both know they can do that. And Georgia's going to have to be prepared to play defense and not make bonehead mistakes to cost them a football game. Because again, we both have them moving on in round two. Indiana and Notre Dame could upset them and they're out. And then Kirby Smart's going to have a lot of questions he's going to have to answer if that happens. So,
well, and take into account, what if Carson Beck doesn't play and it's Gunnar Stockton?
Yeah, then there's even more questions, even more concern for Bulldog fans. So, yeah.
Because they're talking about that Carson Beck might not be ready for whoever Georgia has to play in the second round. They're talking it might be Gunnar Stockton that starts.
Well, they better be getting him ready because if that does happen, being prepared for whoever gets out of round one, whether that's the Hoosiers or the Fighting Irish, so they're going to he'll have to be prepared.
Okay, keys for Boise. What are the keys for Boise State to make a somewhat deep playoff run?
Well, I think their running game, I mean, the kid Gentry, he might win the Heisman this year.
Genty?
If it doesn't go to Travis Hunter. But
snaps don't count as a stat.
but a kid that can play both sides of the football, I mean, how do you not give him that? I mean, it should be a shoo-in, but Boise State they just got to stick to the ground game. That's what got them to where they are now. They're the number 3 seed in the playoff, and they won the Mountain West, right? Did they win that? They won that conference.
Yes,
they won the Mountain West. Okay, so yeah, if they got to continue just to keep doing what they're doing, and they'll make it out of the second round. I mean, both of the opponents there, SMU and Penn State, are both going to give them challenges. So we'll see. But I think if they have to keep playing the football that they played all season long, they should be okay.
I agree with 90% of what you said, but I'm going to add something on. They got to play turnover-free football.
Okay.
They can't turn the ball over. And as we've said all season, they can't take dumb penalties. Dumb penalties are unacceptable penalties. Coin that as a new phrase. Dumb penalties, are unacceptable penalties.
Right.
Now let's get to Arizona State. The team, Arizona State fans, I apologize. I was wrong on you. I said it a couple podcast episodes ago. I'll say it again. I'm sorry. I was wrong on y'all. I should have known this was coming. But what are the keys for Arizona State to make it all the way to the national championship?
Well, they have. I mean, they're the 4 seed. They have they got to play either Texas or Clemson, and a majority of the people out there say they're going to play the Longhorns. That's going to be tough. But again, they're good. They're here. They're the number 4 seed for a reason. They're here. They proved a lot of people wrong. They have a good head coach, a good quarterback. Again, if they play mistake-free football, they could
good running back in Cam Scottaboo.
They could find themselves in the semifinals, or the quarterfinals. I mean, they could find themselves in round 3 for a shot to go to the national championship game. So, you know what? If you look at all the teams on the list outside of the first 8, Arizona State has to be the dark horse of the 4 that are waiting in round 2. I would think out of all of them, Georgia, Boise State, Oregon, Arizona State, they have to be the dark horse because people are like, oh, well, they got to play Texas. Well, Clemson may beat them. Clemson beats them, I give Arizona State some more credit. Now, if Texas wins, I think it's going to be hard, but Arizona State still could upset Texas too. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes down.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm going to add something. The only way I think they could beat Clemson, if they have to play Clemson or Texas, is run the football. You have one of the best running backs in college football and probably the best running back in the Big 12. Sorry, Kansas State with DJ Giddens and Kansas with Devin Neal. Cam Scottaboo is the best running back in the Big 12. And use and abuse him while you have him. Because eventually he's going to go pro.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Now, so we've done Arizona State. We've done Georgia. No, we've done Arizona State and Boise State and Georgia. Now, last but not least, Oregon. How does Oregon make it past the second round and get to the national championship?
Well, I think no matter who wins in round 1, I think they have the toughest second round matchup because Tennessee, they got a good quarterback. They can Josh Heupel. I think they're one of the fastest teams in college football, if not the fastest team in college football. But Oregon can also use that.
I think they might be second fastest behind USF.
So I mean, Oregon uses speed too, and they beat Ohio State during the regular season. And again, it was on a penalty. They played the penalty book and was able to get past them with that. I believe, like you said earlier, Bud, when you were making your picks, they're not going to make the same mistake twice. It's not going to happen. Ryan Day will be prepared for that. If Ohio State gets past Tennessee, which I think we both think that's going to happen. So Oregon, they just have to, they have a good offense. They play just good enough defense to win. But again, Tennessee and Ohio State will test that defense if whoever gets past round 1, because both of them can. Because Ohio State tested them earlier this year, a couple months ago.
Yeah, and got within maybe 30 yards of beating them.
Correct.
If it wasn't for Will Howard making a inexperienced move, sliding in bounds, and not calling the timeout. But that's neither here nor there. Then, so we've done that. Now we're going to talk about the teams in the first round. How does a team like Clemson get all the way to the national championship game? Give me some keys for them.
Well, with them, they have to definitely play mistake-free football because they're in Austin. It is tough to win there. One of the toughest places to play in college football, and they have a huge uphill climb. But they're going to have to play near perfect, in my opinion, to beat Texas. That's just how I see it.
Well, and the other thing with that is, what about the weather? Is it going to be snowing?
Yeah.
Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be windy? I mean, I know Clemson's in South Carolina, and they're kind of used to the cold weather, but they're not used to snow because it very rarely snows in Clemson, South Carolina.
Yeah.
I do know. So now we get down to Texas. How does Texas make a run in the national championship game?
Arch Manning. No, I'm just joking. No. No, they play solid football, and the same thing with them. If they don't make mistakes, they don't do stupid penalties and turn the ball over, they'll get past Clemson, and then Arizona State will be waiting in the wings for them in round 2, which if they're going to get past Arizona State, they're going to have to do the same thing. Texas, but they think they have one. I think they have one loss this year, right? To Georgia. I think it was their only loss they had this year. So
two. They've lost twice to Georgia.
Oh, in the SEC champion. That's right. SEC championship game.
Which I feel like was rigged, but we're not going to get into that.
But yeah, I think they're a solid football team. They have been all year. I mean, they ran the table. They ran it up against Oklahoma. But yeah, they're prepared. They're ready.
Poor Oklahoma, by the way. Sorry, Oklahoma fans. Had to poke the bear.
Yep. But yeah, that's how I think Texas can get to round 2 and then beyond to the national championship game.
I would agree with you. And like I said about a couple of the teams that have a bye through the second round, don't make dumb penalties and don't do dumb things.
Yeah. Yep.
Play smart. If somebody's gonna try to coax you into a penalty after the whistle, walk away. Let them be the one that gets flagged.
Yep.
I feel like you're gonna have some not so nice things about this next team I'm about to say. How does Tennessee make a run in the national championship?
Well, that would make me barf if that somehow happens. But in all seriousness, they're going to have great quarterback play. And they have it. And again, Ohio State is no, pushover team either. They're going to have to get past the Buckeyes. They're on the road. Remember, now they're going into Ohio where it could be snowing. The weather could play a factor.
I think what I heard is it's supposed to snow.
Well, they're used to playing in the snow in Tennessee, but I don't know. Again, you're on the road in the horseshoe, right? Is that what they call?
Yes.
So they have to go on the road. It's not going to be easy to win there. They're going to have to play mistake-free football, and they're going to have to make Ohio State make mistakes. If they can do that, turnovers, and make them commit penalties, they'll win. I know they run fast, but Ohio State's defense will be ready for that. Everybody adjusts to that hyper speed, so don't be surprised if that's what the Buckeyes do when it's all said and done.
I agree. They have to have good quarterback play.
Yeah, Nico.
And Tennessee fans, I want to see your defensive line do something against Ohio State before I can actually say, okay, you do have a good defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Because your defensive line, to me, I'm sorry, it was mid during the regular season. I wasn't very impressed at all. and y'all go get some good offensive lines in the SEC. I'm looking at Georgia. I'm looking at Ole Miss. I'm looking at Texas. Now we get to how can Ohio State, what are keys for Ohio State to make a national championship run?
I think quarterback position. If he doesn't make mistakes, they have the defense. Again, they want Oregon bad. I'm telling you that right now. They want another shot at the Ducks because the Ducks knocked them out of the Big Ten championship, and then they screwed the pooch against Michigan. They're that's the one team I don't think you want to play. A, they're at home. B, they just lost to Michigan at home. They're a rival team. They're mad. Yep. They're pissed off. So guess what? Good luck, Volunteers, because you're going into the horseshoe and a team that wants to.
That is not in a good mood.
No, by no means are they in a good mood. Nope.
Tennessee, you picked the wrong. Here's my keys. And I'm going to try to hype up Ohio State a little bit since I'm the resident Ohio State fan on this said podcast. But keys for Ohio State. 1, offensively, run the ball. How does every good team win games? You have two good, in Ohio State's case, you have two good running backs, and Judkins and Henderson. Run the ball, control the time of possession.
There you go.
Slow the game down. And then when Tennessee's linebackers and safeties start to bite up, you got Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Buka, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis. Hit him with a YOLO ball over the top.
Yep.
On defense, no Davison and Igbenasson. No holding, no interfering with receivers. Play smart defense, blitz when it's the right time. And defensive line needs to get pressure on Nico Iamaleava. Yes, Tennessee fans, I've been working on his last name the whole year. Go back to the very first episode before the season started. I couldn't even say his last name. Now I can. That's the one positive I take away from watching just as much SEC as I do Big Ten football. But now I'm going to give a little hype up to Ohio State. Ohio State, if any of y'all watch the podcast, please don't let me down like you did against Oregon during the regular season. Please put up at least 60 points against Tennessee, which I think that's probably a stretch, but this is the total. This out of the 4 playoff games for the first round, the total for Ohio State and Tennessee is the highest. So Ohio State, please put up a lot of points and hold Tennessee to under. To be realistic, can we hold them under 20 points? I think we can if we play like we're ticked off because we got beat by Michigan. And we show that we should have been the ones in the Big Ten championship game, not those frauds down in Happy Valley, which we'll get into talking about their keys in a second. But Ohio State to win, play mistake-free football.
Yep.
Now we get to the 11th seed SMU. How do these Cinderella Mustangs make a run in the national championship?
Well, they lost in the ACC championship game.
On a field goal.
And they're still.
Let me say something real quick. We got Alabama fans out here crying, saying that they should have been in over SMU.
No, because SMU got to a championship game. Yes, they lost their championship game, but they got
On
there.
a field goal.
And Alabama lost 3 games this year.
All 3 to unranked opponents.
Yep. So, yeah. So, I mean, I saw Alabama earlier this year. They played USF. I was there to watch that game. But I mean, SMU, I mean, other than Clemson, they may have the toughest road to the national championship game because even if they get past Penn State and Boise State, you got Georgia, Notre Dame, or Indiana waiting for you in round 3. That's tough. That's tough. But just like with SMU, with Army, I'm happy to see these new teams and new conferences have success right away, where they're not taking 2 years to get into the conference. They are, they were in the conference championship. Army was also in the conference championship their first year. That's so good. That makes
Texas was too.
Texas was too. The commissioners of each of those conferences, hey, we're pulling these teams in. Well, they're in the championship game the first year, so we were right. I'm making those decisions to pay them money to leave their previous conferences. But I mean, yeah, SMU's got a tough road. There again, we I hate to beat the drum, but again, mistake-free football. Don't turn the ball over. That's how you're going to beat Penn State. If you do make mistakes, Penn State will make you pay, and you're on the road in Happy Valley. That stadium's going to be rocking. We all know how it would be kind of cool.
Well, and on top of that, it's going to be a whiteout.
I was just going to ask that question. Is it a whiteout game? And you know what would make that even better is if it snowed and it's a whiteout game. So that would make it even harder for SMU, who is in Texas. They're out of Texas. So now they're not used to playing in the snow. And now you're in Happy Valley with all those white towels flying around. Good luck. I give you the wish the best. I mean, I have them in an upset, but it's going to be tough to beat Penn State at home.
I agree. I'm sorry to beat the drum just like my co-host did, but mistake-free football is the key for SMU to beat Penn State and to make a deep playoff run. And now we get to Penn State. James Franklin, I'm going to start. James Franklin, can you win a big game? Please. Please win a big game. I see my co-host laughing over there because he's in it. He probably feels the same way I do.
Yeah.
James Franklin, what does he have in common with Ryan Walters? Hasn't won a big game. Mm-hmm. He's 1-13 in big games. This is a big game. This is the college football playoff. Is he going to beat SMU or are they going to choke? My keys for Penn State to make it to the national championship, mistake-free football, and Drew Aller has to play like the upperclassman quarterback he is, and not like a mid-quarterback like he was during the regular season. For you, what does Penn State have to do to make a deep playoff run?
Yeah, you were talking, Bud. You just brought. I was gonna, if you were gonna let me go, I was gonna say the same thing about James. I think James Franklin needs to get out of his own way. He needs to win a big game. This is the whole thing against him is throughout his coaching career, he can't win the big one. Well, here's a first-round playoff matchup. And even if you are to go to beat SMU and move on to round 2 and you lose to Boise State, okay, at least you advanced. If you get knocked out by SMU, there's going to be a lot of questions in Happy Valley to be answered of how
ring.
You still can't win a big game.
Hello, is this James Franklin?
Yeah.
Yes, this is the AD of Penn State. We are firing you.
Yeah, you can't win a big game. You cannot win a big game. So until he does that, maybe this is that game. Maybe he finally gets out of his own way and it happens. So we'll see.
Now we get to the Fighting Kirk Signettis. How do they make a deep playoff run?
Well, first of all, they're going to be in their home state. I'm not going to say their home city. They're going to be in Indiana. And I don't know how. I'm not from Indiana. I don't know how college football ranks. I would assume Notre Dame would be the head honchos in Indiana as far as the state goes, because the Hoosiers are more of a basketball school, and I think so is Purdue. So I would
So is
assume,
Notre Dame somewhat is too.
yeah, they are. Yes, Notre Dame's got a good basketball team as well.
Somewhat.
For
They're good
Indiana,
every couple of years.
For Indiana to make it all the way through, Signetti has been telling them all. He's motivated them to win big games. They were in the game against the Buckeyes. I know they lost that game, but they've been in games this year. They've been in tight games. If they can turn some things around, not make mistakes, I think they can win. And it would be, I have them upsetting the Irish. That would be, huge. That would be huge if they somehow gets around too. But then it's like the team in the basketball tournament. You win the 64 spot only to play the best team in the country, and now you're going to get Georgia waiting for you. Yeah, that's tough. Tough.
But we talked about it with Georgia. Which Georgia are you going to get? Are you going to get the Georgia that has Carson Beck, or are you going to get the Georgia that has the backup quarterback?
Yeah. They get the backup. It's going to be easier. Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Indiana going to beat the drum again. Mistake-free football. No turnovers. Play smart. Play physical. Play hard football. Run the football, because that's the best way to beat a team is running the football. And if you have to run it over and over and over and over again, do it. Now, the last team in the playoff. How does Notre Dame make it all the way?
Well, so they have one loss. They only lose one game this year.
They have the worst loss you can have.
Yeah.
To Northern Illinois.
They overcame that. They're at home. And just like my co-host has said in the past, we were going through these teams. The one thing you have to do is, if you can run the football, it does two things. One, you control time of possession, but two, it also sets up the passing game. Because if you can get the defense to suck in, bring their linebackers in, and you leave your DBs and your safeties out man on man, unless you play a nickel or whatever, or dime. But if you leave your secondary open, it's going to open the passing game up. So if they can make Indiana put the guys in the box, they can open up that passing game. And Notre Dame has good wide receivers. They have a good passing game. Look for that to be something that they may go after Indiana. And, then they have, again, if Georgia has their backup quarterback, whoever wins in this game, and if Georgia isn't playing Carson Beck, they'll have a shot to get through Georgia to get to the quarterfinals to play for a shot to get to the national championship.
I would agree with you even more. Notre Dame, same thing we said about Indiana. Run the football, control time of possession. Don't do dumb things. Don't do dumb things. Don't take dumb penalties.
Mm-hmm.
Walk away if somebody's trying to get you to do something stupid after the play. Or if you're on defense, don't jump off sides. Mm-hmm. Don't flop, because the referees are watching. I'm looking at you, Notre Dame, because I've seen a couple of your games this year. You have defensive linemen that they get poked and they over-exaggerate and act like it's the end of the world. And yes, no, flopping is not okay in a sport of football. No, it is not. And the last thing we're going to talk about tonight, and I know you said we had briefly talked about it via text, about Ohio lawmakers putting a bill out to ban flag planting. Should the rest of college football put that? How do I say this? should all the rest of the commissioners from the conferences, like the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, should they make a rule that if you plant the flag at midfield or in the end zone, that you get fined a X amount of dollars?
I absolutely. I think it's the whole flag planting thing. I think started becoming popular during Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma. I think when these universities are not going to, and again, the game is beautiful to watch. I mean, college football is one of the most exciting things to watch in person. And I don't care if you go to a stadium and your team gets annihilated. It's so fun to watch. And I would hate for a game like this or let's say your team loses by a field goal and you're playing your rival or you're playing a team that you just don't get along with and you get into a fight and then it costs the university money because of that. So I think the NCAA needs to ban it. Ohio, I texted you because I saw that article. It's funny that came up like on my phone Wednesday. I'm like, I got to text Alec because we had just talked about that at the end of the show on Tuesday. And I said they should ban it. I think the NCAA, I think during the offseason, should make a rule and say no more of that nonsense after a game. I mean, I can guarantee you right now, and this is one of the cool things about Army-Navy, at the end of that game, no matter what, both teams sing their alma mater. How cool is that? That both teams, no matter who wins or loses, the losing team sings first, the winning team sings second. So do something like that. If you want to do that, don't have a fight in the middle of the field and over something stupid as planting a flag in the middle of the field to upset the players or coaches for that matter.
I completely agree. I think that needs to be a rule that needs to be put in there. The winning team gets to sing their alma mater first. The losing team goes second.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to do it for us tonight. We will see y'all next week. We will have all wrestling podcast Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 5:45.
Yep.
The college football podcast will be taking, and Bradley and I can agree on it right now. The college football podcast is going to take a little bit of a backseat for a little bit to the other two podcasts that we are going to start. Well, we've already started wrestling, and then in January, we will be starting the MLB, the 9 Innings podcast.
Cool. Look forward to it.
On Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then we will be doing wrestling Thursday and Friday. And that's just so everybody knows. But for Alec and Bradley, we are signing off. We will see y'all next Tuesday.